You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Biz-Souls. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler, and we get to the heart and soul of business and the people that make it happen, and we're having deja vu.
That's right, all over again. We're doing a part two with Daren Margolin. We actually just got off our first one, and there was a point that we wanted to go over a little bit more in terms of business, and Jeffrey's like, hey, we're all set up. We should do it right now. Okay, so here we are.
Let's do the opposite of what the government does, and let's be effective and efficient. So
he said it. He said it, not me. Him.
So Daren, one of the things that was really interesting that you talked to us about was leadership and what you and your perspective from the military and how it applies and good qualities of leadership. And so this is gonna be just a quick short one to focus on. So what do the Marines teach you, and how does it apply to all leaders in all companies?
All right. Well, thanks again for having me back. And you started out with one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite Yankees, Yogi Berra. It's deja vu all over.
That's right.
In the Marine Corps is all about leadership. And we shared a clip that I had sent to you from a CEO who talked about the best leadership's lessons that he ever got was in the Marine Corps, from the small unit level, 3 or 4 Marines, all the way on up to being basically the CEO or commander of an organization. So we really do pride ourselves on leadership. And there's a few things I think that are absolutely critical. And although I've never been a CEO in the private sector, I've heard many CEOs speak about these same sort of leadership traits and characteristics that lead to them running successful companies. And they're things such as integrity, ethics, taking care of your people, attention to detail. And instead of the focus on warfighting capabilities, or if you're in the recruit training environment, the quality of the Marines that you're producing, especially if you know they are going to combat, in the business world, it's the bottom line. So let's talk first, if I can, just about people. The expression of you have to love your people, but not be in love with them. People want to be held accountable. Marines want to be held accountable. They want to be held to a standard. Right. And so whether it's how you wear your uniform, to how well you do your job, as to what sort of physical fitness you're in, if you don't hold people to a standard, then the other people see it. Even in an immigration court, if you've got a judge who's out of court every day and not moving cases, other judges are looking at him or her saying, well, why am I busting my butt and putting in 40 to 60 hours a week for the same exact paycheck?
So Daren, you've run big teams. I mean, with DHS, you were responsible for a lot of people. In the military, you were responsible for a lot of people as well. So how do you execute this? So it's one thing to say integrity. It's one thing to say to get to know your people. And, CEOs got a long list of to-dos to do. Redundant. So how do you execute this stuff? How do you execute
We
each
want
of the
specific,
qualities?
step by step. I'm kidding.
just some things that you did to stay in touch with your people, to be human to them and stay connected to them.
Well, as far as just showing concern for your people, I mean, really, I think we're talking about two different things. What's the metric that you're paying attention to? And then how do you keep your people motivated to do the job that needs to be done, even if they don't know that you need them to do certain things? And they say that one expression is that the most effective leadership is the ability to get people to do things that they don't want to do.
Right.
And so, consistent with, I think, the theme of your show is positive inspirational leadership, to me, is absolutely essential. And in the military, you brought up in our last podcast, Jack Nicholson, the character in A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
That authoritarian kind of negative leadership by fear, it does crop up, but it's hard to be successful in the Marines, in my opinion, if that's your leadership style. You have to be inspirational. You have to be a positive leader. The generals that I've worked for and colonels that I've known who have led men into combat, where you're asking them, men and women, to put their life on the line. If they're not inspired, then they're not going to do it for you. And so I think it's the same thing, and I would approach it the same way as a CEO. If you go into Costco, if you go into Home Depot, I say to myself, these folks genuinely seem happy to be here, doing basically blue-collar jobs, and what that tells me is they're being led well. They're being paid fairly. They've got a positive environment. And so I think these are things that you have to do in a military unit, because you are often asking people to work nights, work weekends, do things that are physically and mentally very difficult. If you're not giving them the proper work environment, then they're just not going to do those things. That includes knowing what's going on in their lives, so that if they need something, they're comfortable going to you and telling you about it, and then you've got to work with them, even if it hurts. Somebody may need certain time off for childcare, daycare, a sick child. I need off on a Friday because my spouse is committed to this event, or short vacation that we have to go on, especially in extremis. I think those are some of the key things that you have to do, and I think that would translate well into the business sector.
Can we apply what would help in the judicial sector? So if you do, not just a law firm, what would help in our government side of the law?
Yeah, 100%. And let's talk about in the immigration context, right? Running an immigration court. I remember, and I won't mention names, but when I was working at DHS, I had a bad habit of saying, well, in the Marine Corps, we would do X, Y, and Z. Well, in the Marine Corps, and I was constantly being told, well, this isn't the Marine Corps. And you're right, it's not in the Marine Corps, but you know what it is? It's human beings and it's people.
Right.
And leadership is leadership. And this is why I despise the use of the word manager, because manager to me implies that people are not human, emotional, feeling beings. You're just managing them like pieces on a chessboard.
It's task oriented.
And I would bet that your best CEOs and your best business leaders would tell you the same thing, is that you have to be attuned to what's important to people, and you have to inspire them to do the job that you're trying to collectively do to contribute to whatever success looks like, whether it's the bottom line, whether it's completing a project, whether it's a military mission. In the government, both in the judiciary, the federal judiciary that we have previously talked about, as well as immigration court within the Department of Justice, there is this bureaucratic mindset that I always tried to resist and would continue to resist in the future of, I'm getting a pretty good paycheck. It may be $200,000 a year to be an immigration judge. All I've got to do is show up, put in my 8 hours. I could decide a case, not decide a case, continue it to a year from now, or I could just sit at my desk and stare at my computer and not do the tasks that I'm supposed to be completing today. And so as a leader, I think you've got to always be aware of that, and then lead and motivate your people to do better, to be focused on the mission.
So specifically, you've got a busy day ahead of you. You're running a crew. Did you want to bang that loud?
No, sorry. I was
Anyway,
checking time.
You're running a crew. How do you force yourself to make the time to get to see your people? How do you get, whether it's, management by walking around or something else? How did you make sure that you found out
Office
about your
hours.
people? And you've got your own personal life too.
Yeah, you've got to allocate the time for it. So if you're talking about in the military context, as a military leader, for me as a supervisor in immigration court, it was harder because, and one of the reasons why I left is answering ridiculous tasks from headquarters. They can take over your life, which only confirms for me something that we detest in the Marine Corps is micromanagement. Tell me what the job is. Don't tell me how to do it. If you don't think I know how to do the job, then hire somebody else. And so what I would do is, I had, for example, as an immigration supervisory judge, maybe 20 judges who are on probation the first 2 years of their time. And so instead of just mailing it in and writing probation reports, I would go sit in their courtroom, or I would come in by Zoom and I would observe exactly how they were running their courts. And then we would have conversations, and I would try to make it as positive as I could to give them the constructive criticism and feedback to better do their job. I mean, you really have to allocate time for this. And so I think that applies probably in any business or any organization, is you really have to be focused on your people. You have to make the time for it.
Very good. Excellent. And you know what? That's a real nugget. So with Zoom, you could just set it up so you could zoom into whatever, zoom into a meeting, zoom into so it's.
But does that go into privacy?
Yeah. Oh, very, very.
I'm kidding.
We were talking offline about privacy and stuff. So yeah, very funny. Okay. Daren,
It's
thank
what
you.
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah,
This is great.
This was great. So,
and we're
that's
still
it,
going to
yeah.
have you back.
yeah. Well, we'll think of something else. All right. That is it for us. I'm Verona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
And this has been Biz-Souls. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Daren. You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts, Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.